The first sound I remember from that night isn't my father's voice. It's the floor. That cold, polished marble hitting my cheek. The kind of floor that only exists in places trying very hard to look like money. And I remember thinking, even through the pain, they picked this venue because they wanted to impress her family, not because they loved Marcus, because they needed him to look like something he wasn't. That thought lasted maybe half a second before the contraction started. I'm Serena. I'm 28. And for most of my life, I was the invisible daughter, which is a specific kind of loneliness that people who've lived it will recognize immediately. Not abused enough to have a clean story, not loved enough to feel safe, just useful when they needed something, and furniture the rest of the time. My brother Marcus was the chosen one. My father Raymond made that clear before I was old enough to understand what it meant. My mother Linda reinforced it so thoroughly, so consistently, that by the time I was 12, I had stopped expecting anything different. What I did instead was work, not because I was noble about it, because I was angry and I didn't know what else to do with it. I put myself through the University of Illinois Chicago on a full academic scholarship while working tech support overnights, answering phones until 4 in the morning, then dragging myself to 8 a.m. lectures, still smelling like bad coffee. For 4 years, no safety net, no help from home. Actually, negative help from home. Because the moment my parents realized I was earning money, they started calling every month with a new emergency. Utility bills. Transmission on Raymond's truck. One time, genuinely, it was Linda's hair appointment. I paid it. All of it. Because I had been trained since birth that my job in this family was to give and never ask. Marcus, meanwhile, was 30 years old and living on their couch. I'm not being cruel. That's just what was happening. After I graduated, something shifted. I got hired as a senior software architect at a firm in the Loop. Within 2 years, I was clearing 6 figures. For the first time in my entire life, I could breathe through both nostrils. I bought myself a BMW, custom metallic silver, $85,000, cash. I sat in that parking lot for a long time after I drove off the lot. Not because I was performing some moment of triumph, just because I genuinely couldn't believe I'd made it out. That car wasn't a car. It was proof that I had not become what they expected me to become. Then I met Daniel. Then I got pregnant. And, somewhere in that happiness, I made the mistake I always make with my family. I thought things might be different now. Marcus called me 3 days before his engagement party. His voice had that particular sweetness it only gets when he wants something, like honey poured over something that's been sitting out too long. Hey sis, Brittany's parents are flying in from the north suburbs this weekend. We're doing some high-end wedding shopping, and I need to make a good impression. Can I borrow the BMW? 3 days. You're my sister. I didn't want to. Every instinct I had said no. Then Linda called, crying. The specific crying she does when she knows it'll work. Don't be selfish over a piece of metal, Serena. Your brother needs this. You've always made everything about you. I handed over the keys. I told him 3 days. I want them back at the party. The night of the engagement party, I was 8 months pregnant. My feet were swollen inside shoes I probably shouldn't have worn. My lower back had been aching since that morning. Daniel was stuck in a board meeting and promised to come the second it ended. I walked into that ballroom alone in a maternity dress, genuinely trying to be happy for my brother. I wasn't there an hour before I knew I needed to leave. I found Marcus near a floral display, surrounded by Brittany, her parents, a little orbit of impressed-looking people. I kept my voice low. I kept my face neutral. Congratulations. I'm exhausted and I need to head home. Can I get my keys? He looked at me, then at Brittany's father, then back at me, and he laughed. Loud. Theatrical. Making sure everyone heard. What keys, Serena? What are you talking about? I felt something drop in my stomach. My car, Marcus. The keys you borrowed? He shook his head slowly, like I was embarrassing myself. Mom and Dad gave me that car for my engineering graduation. I don't know what you think you lent me, but... He turned to Brittany and smiled. Actually, I gave it to her tonight. Engagement gift. Brittany held up the key fob. My key fob. Dangling it. The room started spinning. Before I could respond, my parents materialized on either side of me, Raymond grabbing my arm, Linda gripping the other, walking me backward into a darker corner of the hall like they were managing a scene. Lower your voice, Raymond hissed. His eyes were bloodshot. His grip was hard enough to bruise. You are not ruining your brother's night. He stole my car. You will go home, and you will be grateful we even invited you. I said I was calling the police. That's when I saw it happen in Raymond's face. Some threshold crossed. Whatever his version of reason was, it left. What replaced it wasn't even really anger. It was something older and uglier than anger. He grabbed the metal tripod beside the videographer. I don't fully remember the impact. I remember the sound. I remember my glasses shattering. I remember hitting the edge of a banquet table on the way down, and the particular horrible way my body registered that. Not as pain exactly, but as wrongness, like something inside had been pulled out of place. I hit the floor, and the contraction started. What happened in the next few minutes I've tried to organize into a coherent memory, but it doesn't want to be organized. It comes in fragments, the cold of the floor, blood on my hands when I touched my forehead, the sound of my own voice, which I barely recognized, asking for help, and my mother leaning toward Brittany, whispering, "Step back. Don't get it on your dress." Raymond, handing the tripod back to the videographer. She tripped. She's being dramatic. Marcus, turning away. My keys going into his pocket. They were going to step over me. That was the plan. Just step over me and let the night continue. I had spent 28 years trying to make them love me, and in that moment, on that floor, the effort of it finally ran out. Not with grief. With a clarity so complete it almost felt like calm. I looked at my stomach. I made a promise I meant with everything I had left. We're getting out of here. And then I'm going to take everything from them the way they took everything from me. My cousin Aaliyah found me. Pushed through the crowd. Called Daniel. Get here now. They're killing her. He was 4 blocks away. I heard the doors before I saw him. That particular crash of someone who was not slowing down for anything. Daniel is 6'2", and on a normal day he moves like someone who has somewhere to be. That night he moved like a wall coming down. Behind him 4 officers. Paramedics with a gurney. He saw me on the floor and made a sound I've never heard from him before or since. A sound that doesn't have a word for it. He was on his knees beside me before I could say anything, pressing his jacket to my forehead, his hands shaking. Stay with me. I'm here. I'm here. Raymond immediately started performing. Trembling voice, sympathetic expression, the whole production. Son, calm down. It was an accident. She tripped. We were just about to call. Daniel stood up. He pointed at the security camera mounted directly above where I'd fallen. This building runs on the same data infrastructure I manage. I'm pulling that footage right now. His voice was completely quiet. That's how I knew. He looked at Raymond. At Linda, at Marcus, who had been edging toward a side exit and was now standing very still between two officers. You tried to kill my wife and my child over a car. He wasn't performing. He wasn't threatening. He was just stating a fact he was entirely certain of. Your lives are over. Our daughter was born 40 minutes after we reached the hospital. Emergency C-section. She weighed 4 pounds, 14 ounces, and she came out fighting. The NICU team kept saying that she's fighting like they were surprised. I wasn't surprised. She'd been surviving hostile conditions for 8 months. When I woke up from the anesthesia, the first thing I saw was Daniel's face. Exhausted, wrecked, smiling. "She's breathing on her own," he said. I didn't cry. I'd used up my tears on people who didn't deserve them for 28 years. What I felt instead was something quieter, a settling, like I had finally arrived somewhere I was allowed to stay. The legal response was not impulsive. It was careful and it was complete. Grand theft auto on Marcus' $85,000 vehicle, registered in my name. Class 1 felony. Aggravated battery of a pregnant woman on Raymond. Caught in full on security footage, no ambiguity, no version of events that helped him. Obstruction of justice on Linda for her role in the cover-up, and once I had that established, I pulled the rest. The house they lived in was leased under my corporate name. I had been paying it quietly for years, the way you pay for things when you've been trained that keeping the peace is your responsibility. I ended the lease. I canceled the phone plans. I closed the credit cards they'd opened using my information. They spent the weeks before trial in county lockup, unable to make bail. When the hearing came, I joined by video link. I sat in my living room with my daughter asleep against my chest, and I watched them on the monitor. My father, my mother, my brother, in orange jumpsuits, shackled, with overworked public defenders who had clearly been given nothing to work with. They looked smaller than I remembered, not because justice had transformed them into something diminished, just because I had finally stopped making them large. The security footage played for the court. It was clear. Timestamp, angle, no question about what happened and who did it. Raymond received 12 years. Marcus, 6. Linda, 3 years probation with a permanent felony record. I watched until the verdicts were read. Then I closed the laptop. The silence in my house after that was the first silence I had ever lived inside that felt like mine. I looked out the window. The BMW was in the driveway, returned after Marcus's arrest. I looked down at my daughter. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment, because I've seen stories like mine get wrapped up in triumph, in "I won" energy, and that's not quite what it was. There was relief, yes. There was justice, but there was also grief, somewhere underneath all of it, for the family I spent 28 years believing I could earn. You don't get that time back. You don't get a different childhood. You just get to decide what you do with the one you had. I decided to do this, build something real. With Daniel. With our daughter. With the life I made entirely by myself and get to keep entirely for myself. Blood isn't family. I know that now in a way that's permanent and settled and no longer painful. Love is family. Showing up is family. Choosing someone again and again, even when it costs you something. That's family. I have that now. I'm not going back.